Do you know what? I feel like it's about time we do something stupid on the channel. It's been a while. So, in today's video, we're gonna try and cool some CPUs with a tiny little phone cooler. The phone cooler we're gonna use for our terrible experiment today is this S6, I guess, which I bought off Temu for a recent video. Now, the reason why you probably don't want to use a phone cooler to cool a desktop CPU is because phone chips need to be extremely efficient. Apple's A15 Bionic, for example, tops out at just over 8 watts, whereas even desktop Celerons and Athlons use several times as much. But I do have some hope for this, because this cooler managed to cool the living crap out of my iPhone 13 while gaming, so maybe it'll be fine? And in today's video, I'm gonna start with an uncharacteristically reasonable use case for it. First, we're gonna use it to cool a Latte Panda, which is like a big boy Raspberry Pi. The M3 8100Y APU in here only draws about 5 to 6 watts of power, which is very much in line with what most phones use. Now, I know this doesn't count as a desktop chip like I've been saying, but we'll get to it. So the first use case may actually not be a complete disaster, but let's see, let's give it a try. Oh, it's so cute and little. It should be relatively straightforward to swap out coolers here, and if you look on the other side, if anything, the S6 seems a little bit more hefty, and I'm pretty sure the S6 has a secret weapon up its sleeve. But before the torture begins, I think we need a baseline reading. Wow, it's so light that the HDMI cable dominates it. And once I finally figured out how the power button works on it, I got my control reading. And with the Latte Panda just updating Windows, we're already in the high 60s, so it seems like the phone cooler doesn't have that much competition here. Now with this little system, I'm using Half-Life 2 because that's kind of the peak of what it can handle, and handle is maybe a strong word. But with the stock cooler and the system drawing just about 10 watts, we're hovering around 65 degrees Celsius, occasionally jumping up into 70. So let's drop this little cooler on there and see what it does. Oh, that is adorable, but I do immediately foresee an issue. The CPU we're trying to make contact with is lower than a lot of the surface-mounted stuff on the PCB around it, so I don't know how we're gonna get the cooler to make contact with it. My first idea was to remove the fan and shroud of the existing cooler, so we could use that heatsink as a way to interface the phone cooler with the SoC. Oh, never mind. The fan and the heatsink have very much been pair bonded for life, and I don't really want to separate them, so that's not gonna work. The only other thing I can think of is using a thick thermal pad so that we can make contact. Although that does feel very savage, but what we're doing is already very savage, so why not just step it up a notch, you know? I don't know, this feels really stupid. So I'm just gonna stick that onto the thermal pad? Now, to trick the Latte Panda into thinking that something terrible isn't happening to it, I have left the original fan plugged in. Hopefully, this doesn't go terribly. After a quick boot, it was initially looking very promising. It did spike a little bit there, but 50C!
A few moments later.
Oh yeah, no, it's real unhappy the moment we started. The moment we started Half-Life 2. Ooh, that's really not good. At this point, it feels a little bit like torturing a small animal. A small panda, if you will. Okay, so that went about as poorly as expected. Although, I am super happy to blame the thermal pad for the failure. And considering that our proof of concept was a complete failure, I think it makes complete sense for the next step to be upping the ante significantly. Our next victim is a Ryzen 3 5300G. TDP-wise, this is a huge step up from the little Latte Panda, but it's got a nice flat surface on the top, which should give us very even mounting with the little phone cooler, which may make up for the huge difference in power. Maybe. And then in terms of reference cooler, we're using this Wraith Stealth because it comes with a 5300G, and I think it makes sense. And the significant disparity in endowment does really put the size of the challenge into perspective. Let's see how it goes. Whoa, the little Wraith Stealth is holding up very well, with the CPU topping out at about 42 watts of power draw, which isn't a huge amount, but we're getting 56C on the CPU after a while of gaming on what is essentially a free cooler. That's pretty good. Which finally makes it time for our borderline criminal negligence. Now this feels wildly stupid, but I want to initially use it in the same way that it's used on the back of a phone. So I'm just gonna stick this down onto the CPU. I'm not going to use a thermal interface because that's not how it works on a phone. So, no Tim, just bareback. So I guess this just goes like that. Well, if that doesn't look like it's going to cause a small fire, I don't know what does. I guess I just quickly boot it and hope that the 3 milligrams of copper doesn't heat soak by the time we're playing Battlefield 5. Let's see. Well, good news and bad news. The bad news is that we're not even in the game yet and we're basically at 100 degrees Celsius. But the good news is that the little AMD CPU does have quite a will to live because it's reduced its power draw quite a lot already. We have lost about 30 frames per second going from the normal cooler to this. But other than that, the fact that it hasn't exploded yet is kind of impressive, considering that it basically couldn't deal with that 8-ish watt Latte Panda CPU. So I'm kind of impressed. I'm not gonna lie, this is a very playable gaming experience. I wouldn't say that this is a sustainable performance we're getting here, but it is actually working. And remember, this is still without thermal paste, so yeah, let's add that and see how much it helps. Okay, so we're at 96 pretty much immediately after we've loaded in, but we're above 30 watts. It then immediately started creeping down to about 24 watts where it stabilized. It's actually kind of taking it. We're getting 100 frames per second on Battlefield 5. Pound for pound, this little phone cooler is a complete beast, which I think means we should quickly open it up and see what magic it employs for this very impressive performance. Yep, there's our little Peltier. This phone cooler has a thermoelectric element in it for some reason, and that's why, despite its size, it's remarkably powerful. And then this is the ring of magnets that makes it stick to the plate that you glue to the back of your phone. It is surprisingly effective at this scale, and it makes me really want to play around with some Peltiers. Let me know if you want to see videos on that in the comments down below. And with that, thank you very much for watching, and until the next video, bye-bye.